So after looking types of risk is monetary value, changes in the economy, and outcome. Now let's look at a risk. Let's classify a risk based on subjectivity of the risk. There is a subjective risk and an objective risk. A subjective risk is something that we believe there is a risk. It's on in our imagination, in our brain. But objective risk is a risk, the actual risk, actually that thing might happen in real life rather than in our mind. This objective risk mostly declines when the number of exposures rises. So when we try more, we will be perfect, and the probability of encountering these risks might decline in actual real life. So now let's classify risks based on the peoples affected. It's fundamental risk and particular risk. Fundamental risk is a group risk caused by social. It's a group risk, not on one person only. It affects the group at a group level. It might be caused by different social, economical, political phenomenon, and it's unpreventable. So it's no one's fault. As we have seen, this is also uninsurable. Why? Because insurance companies cannot pay for risks that have too much number of people affected, because they cannot pay them all. But if the risk mostly affects one person from thousand or million persons, they can afford to pay for that person. But if the risk is a kind of risk that can affect too much or too many people, they cannot pay for all. So fundamental risk is not supported for insurance companies to pay. A fundamental risk can be a drought, flood, unemployment at a national level, or not personal unemployment. I have seen that I've said before, or inflation, war. These kind of things happens to the group of too much people, so they are insurable. The other one is a particular risk. This is a loss arise from individual event and fault of 1%, or fault of one individual. This is the fault of one individual. Example, it might not always, but sometimes it's a fault of individual and happen on one person. For example, death, injury, disability. Most pure risks are particular risks. So the last one is based on diversification. Risk can be diversifiable risk and non-diversifiable risk. Diversifiable risks are some that we can reduce by diversifying, and it affects only individuals, not the entire economy. Because if they affect the entire economy, it is difficult to diversify them using any technique. Hence, it happens on everyone. But this happens on individual. He can diversify or eliminate it. For example, risks on bond, treasury bill, stock, etc. It can be diversified most of the time. They have undiversified parts, but most of the time the risks that can happen on this kind of securities is mostly diversifiable. That's why we use diversifying portfolio most of the time of these assets. The other one is non-diversifiable risk. It affects the entire economy and a large number of pupils. So it's very difficult to diversify for one person. Example, inflation, war, and flood. So it's all about types of risk and definition and some related terms to risk. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.